So now we're going to begin to start looking at anger and the male-female relationship. We talked about the test of life, remember? And we said one of the tests of life that we all are challenged to negotiate is the test of love, the test of family. If there is one place that you can examine yourself to see to what extent you have been able to master those skills at managing your anger that are sufficient is at the level of your relationship with your spouse, lover, etc. Okay? And there's no way to deceive yourself in these relationships. Therefore, these kinds of relationships, marriage, family, parenthood, membership in a community, all of these kinds of human relationships your human relationships and the quality of them is largely going to be determined by your degree of skill in managing your anger. Now, when we do some of the additional series of workshops, we will also see how your additional skills at managing your lust, your greed, your attachment, and your ego play a role in that too. But today we're going to definitely begin to look and see the role that anger plays in the quality of the relationship that you have. Now, you remember so many times I've said that when you just have this ego mythology going for yourself, you just got this esteem stuff. When you're thrown into a situation of marriage or any intimate human relationship, okay, for the first time in your life, you're going to discover all of your inadequacies. For the first time in your life, you're not going to be able to fake. You can fake every place else. You can't fake it anymore. Does not work. And remember, the highest experience available to human consciousness is the experience with another human being. Please make a note, everything you want in this life will come to you through another human being. And you got to be clear on this thing, because coming from the West, we get caught up in this madness about individualism, doing your own thing. I can make it on my own. Nonsense. That's ego. You are not separate from the existence. But you have to understand, you got to get a different gestalt here. You clearly have to understand everything that you don't have right now and everything that you do have right now has come through the other human being. So let's get very clear on that. You see, that's the first thing. And we want to begin to see how our inability to manage our anger impacts on these relationships. But we know already, because of previous discussions, we know divorce and all those other kinds of conflicts are epidemic in this culture. We know that. Many of us have had our own experiences. We want to find some way to give ourselves some relief from the agony and misery that we are experiencing in our human relationships. All the suffering that most of us will undergo will be because of our inability to establish a harmonious relationship with another human being. Your car is not making you unhappy. Please make a note of that. Your house is not a factor, okay? It is the other human being. So we're going to have to deal with that. Well, where do we begin? Let's take the traditional relationship of man-woman. A couple things have to be realized from the outset here. In Western culture, where our whole system is rooted around the patriarch. Women have been made to feel and very often function as inferior to men. It's a fact, men, whether we wish to acknowledge it or not. In Western culture, we tend to be conditioned, socialized along a line of artificial superiority to women. It's artificial. It is false. It is not the case. But it has been a part of our conditioning. It has been woven into our whole sense of masculinity. You don't even feel like a man unless you can dominate someone. Your whole experience of masculinity is rooted in dominating someone. And when this attitude is brought into the marriage or any close relationship, a woman in that relationship, by definition, cannot experience happiness. No one who's being dominated will have the experience of happiness. It's not possible. Therefore, last time I mentioned to you that in Western culture, for a marriage to succeed to a maximum degree, that success is more dependent upon the man than the woman. Now I know that this is a very different approach because you've been told that it's 50-50. But the society is not 50-50 at all. The onus is on the man. So now we have to understand what are some of the issues that trigger male anger and what are some of the issues that are triggering female anger. We're looking at one of the issues now that is triggering the female's anger in these close personal relationships. One is a feeling of being, one is a sense of being made to feel inferior. Women, how many relationships have you been in over the course of your life where some man really made you feel inferior? We want to have an honest discussion here now. This is not psychology 101. We want to talk real world.
I've had at least one relationship where I felt inferior.
You actually felt inferior?
Mm-hmm. Because he would always ask me, when are you going to go back and finish school? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? Mm-hmm. To bring me up to what he probably thought was his standard, what I should be.
Made you feel that you wasn't good enough. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for those relationships, ladies. I'm looking for those aspects in that relationship where you were having feelings of not being good enough. Let's put it another way. What makes you the most angry at men?
Being put down.
Being put down?
Yeah.
That's inferior.
That's inferior.
Right. What else?
You have to do everything.
You have to do everything, right? That's dominated and controlled.
Mine usually comes from disappointment, being let down. Someone saying they make promises, rose gardens, and never fulfill them.
Being lied to,
Mm-hmm.
Being let down.
Yeah, that's part of their thing, I believe. That's because that's out of their own inadequacy.
Let me tell you now, you just, but you're right. Let me explain to you. One of the most prevalent methods that men use to protect their own ego mythology is lying. It is classic.
Yes.
Why do men lie? Why do black men lie?
Because they don't feel good enough, I believe.
It's self-contempt.
Right.
Self-contempt. Now, the man goes out in the world and he wants to give the family, because he's following this script society laid down for him. He wants to give the family the big house, the big cars, and all those other things. But the reality is that out in the world, this man can barely pull down more than minimum wage. And he's ashamed of himself. Now the question becomes, how handle that? Well, I lie by saying, I don't want no house. We don't even need no house. We don't need no car. I see what I'm saying? But I'm lying. I really do feel we need a house and a car. But only by lying, you see, can I give myself some relief from the reality of my political and economic impotence. Because when I have to acknowledge my economic and political impotence, it destroys whatever little self-esteem I got. The reality is that the black men in this country don't control nothing. Period. No industry. We don't control the social, we don't control the political, we don't control the health, we don't control the legal, we don't control the military, we don't control the educational, nor do we control, believe it or not, even the religious institutions in this culture. We are impotent, and we don't like it. We are ashamed of it. But the only technique we have for managing our own shame is through lying. So we lie to you. And this makes you angry. Right? It makes you angry. What are some of the other things? We want to see what are the female issues that is causing them to have so much anger in these relationships. Because I've already told you that these relationships are failing because we have anger and we don't know how to manage it. But we got to first start by coming out of denial, of course, identifying, you know the process, right? But we got to deal with these things. Yes, Tony?
I grew up not knowing my dad.
All right.
So my relationships, and I always, I don't know, probably at an early age, I always had a kind of resentment to the male gender.
What that resentment means? Put it to the class, make her act right. All right.
So also I had to deal with feeling like a form of inferiority. Because, you know, my cousins, they all had their dads, and I used to always wonder what it was like to just have your dads. You know, you seem like they had a certain cushion I didn't have. And when I started dating, you know, I mean, I'm not aware I'm bringing all of these thoughts. So I had always been accused that I wouldn't make my boyfriends feel like they were good enough. So when I finally met my dad, I was about 32 or 34. And before I met him, I had already knew that nothing was going to change in my life. I just wanted to kind of like have a visual picture of this person. And actually, it probably did. It gave me different feelings, because after I met him, even though I didn't expect anything, I think deep down I wanted him to try to make up for the time that he was never there. And he never did it. But he, on the other hand, he wanted me to give him an undying love, which is not possible. So even now, you know, I consciously try to treat men the way I think that I should treat them, but I really don't know how to treat them, and I really sometimes don't care. But I know that until I can get a handle on that, because it's hard for me to make a person feel I'm totally dependent on you, or I need so much from you. You know, and I've been accused of having like the male psychic, like you men like men treat women. But it's not something that I worked at doing.
Well, we're going to go into that because probably in the next session after we finish the home, we're going to start talking about the union concept of animus and anima. We're going to start talking about how we project onto men your own internalized concept of what a man should be like based on your own imagination. We'll look into all of that. Much as you react to the projections from the judgment, very often you react from the projection of your masculinity that is in you, right? But let's set it up before we get into the hairy issues here, okay? We want to start listing the kind of things that trigger the female anger within the context of the male-female relationship. We've looked at a couple of them. Being made to feel inferior, dominated, controlled, lied to, right? Uncooperative.
And a lot of times when they're being uncooperative, they're waging a psychological and emotional warfare against the woman. Now, that messes a lot of women up. That knocks her self-esteem or self-respect out because in a relationship like a marriage, a husband and wife, that husband takes on that role of your parent. You don't think your parent would lie to you. You don't think your parent will put you down. I mean, this is somebody who loves you, supposedly. And when they play all these games with you, the subterfuge, in your own personal relationship, that can mess you up.
Yes, all right. Okay, there's certain expectations then.
Expectations.
That you bring
Yeah.
to the relationship based on prior experience with the males in your life.
Right, that's my.
Keep it.
I think lack of, I would say I'll be disappointed, but I probably would say angry, lack of sensitivity.
Lack of sensitivity, that's a good one. Expand on that for us. Will we call that affection or, I mean, what do you want to call it? Sensitivity is such a, precise word. Fill it in.
I have maybe I can express it and give it an example.
All right.
And this really bothers me with this brother.
It
but
makes
I
you
just,
angry. We should have no more people left in the now. This is the seventh session, right? All right.
So much so that I practice whenever I see him again, I'm gonna tell him how disappointed I am. and I really have a very special love for this brother. And we had spent a long evening together once, and back last winter. And I think it was one of those nights we had a snowstorm, and he just didn't leave his comfortable house to even see that I got to my car, clean my car out, or whatever. I don't even know if he looked out of the window for me, you know what I'm saying? And that was such a great, I was insulted.
He made you feel worthless.
Yeah, right. So
How many concur?
I looked at that as lack
By
of
a show of hands? Oh, it's almost unanimous? That men tend to make women feel worthless. Doesn't that follow from our masculine logic of being superior to you? If I'm superior to you and you're inferior to me, then that's going to come out in my relationship with you, right?
I interpret it as lack
Lack
of
of
sensitivity. Here again, probably don't want to really admit that that's what was happening, that worthlessness, that feeling of worthlessness.
I find that when we boil all of this down, primarily what I'm finding in these relationships is that there are the majority of women who are in relationships or who have attempted relationships and have ceased to attempt them henceforth, who have protested their feminine role. Okay? They won't even get back into the relationship because of a prior experience of worthlessness. And it becomes the basis of all the conflict. This worthlessness makes her angry. Does it make you angry when somebody makes you feel worthless, ladies? Of course. How do they express it? They nag. Nagging is one of the commonmost methods that these women who are having deep feeling of worthlessness express their anger. at that man who's making them feel worthless. They nag. Nag, 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 nag. But it is a negative form of managing the anger, because men, when the woman nag at you, does that help? Huh? It increases the conflict on it. Because the aim of the nagging is now to make you feel worthless back, isn't it? You're making me feel worthless, I'll make you feel worthless back. It's a form of revenge. Nagging is a form of revenge. Please make a note of that. Fussing is a form of revenge. It's just another form of nagging. It's just general nagging, right? This feeling of worthlessness, I'm saying, is prevalent among women. And it's prevalent because it has a lot to do with the attitude that us men bring into the relationship based on our whole teaching that we received on women prior to marrying you. And so therefore, what has to happen now is that there has to be a cultural shift in our thinking. All right? Western marriages traditionally are unsuccessful. By definition. Because of all of the socio-biological factors that have shaped their whole approach toward union. It has never been successful, not even in the Ice Age in Europe. And that is reflected here. And to the extent that we are conditioned along those same European lines, to that same condition, we're going to continue to experience conflict and these black male-female relationships. We're going to cover a lot of things, or try to at least. We don't have many workshops left, and I can't focus the balance of the workshop on just male-female, though we probably should, because this is such a critical area. Because if the woman is feeling worthless in this situation, what kind of mother will she be? Cannot possibly be the best. She's feeling worthless. She is going to parent out of this feeling of worthlessness. She's feeling worthless. She will parent out of this feeling of worthlessness, and therefore that child is bound to be misparented in some shape or form. Yes, Keith?
I could see her looking for that which she needs from her man, from her children.
Very often she displaces it, though.
Displaces that.
That's right. Very often, because there's a certain need to be loved, need to be respected, need to be made to feel worthwhile. And if you can't get it from the man, you'll try to demand it from the children. Go ahead, Keith, you were going to interject.
Yeah, in a situation like that, you put too much pressure on the kids. Because how are you going to ask a 6-year-old child to be a man, to, provide you those things that you need?
But it's not a rational thing. It's at the level of urgent instinct. Before we go a little further into the dynamics going on between this typical male and typical woman inside of in their effort to do this thing called human relationship. All right? Let's pause for a moment. Let's look at the male side of this. Okay? What are some of the male issues that triggers anger in these human relationships that we have formed with women?
Not enough respect.
Oh, whoa! This is interesting, isn't it? Huh? Lack of respect.
Can you define respect?
We want you to talk to us.
What did I get myself into? In terms of respect, in terms of being agreeable at some phase and time of life, in terms of this, putting a level on, decreasing that nagging, in terms of There's always a rebuttal. There's always a rebuttal in terms of sharing opinions and feelings. It goes on. Should I continue?
All right.
I'm going to expand on what Seth Ross said. It's like women don't have confidence in the man, which is a form of respect.
Right.
Yes.
Because it's like
It's
this.
not it's trust.
A
But
person,
you're very close. It's
a person will come and ask you one thing, and you give him an answer. They'll turn around and ask the white man, and he'll believe him.
Right.
And it's like in a relationship, a woman won't believe you. She'll believe the soap opera. But it's like they don't believe in the black man. It's like they're expecting a letdown. You know, like, okay, I know you're going to let me down sooner or later.
Now, Lieutenant has focused on something. Because one thing you have to understand, when you look deep, ladies, at the structure of the male psychology, men have a different kind of psychological makeup than women. Okay? 1 minute, Rob. One of the most important feelings that a man needs is the feeling that he is trusted. Contrast to fellas, one of the most important needs that a woman has is the feeling of security. Therein lies the problem. It's a different thing. Now, you can trust your woman. There's no problem. Right? But you expect her that she can trust, and you try to give her trust thinking that that's what she needs. She don't need your trust. She needs to be made to feel secure. There's a lot of reasons for that too. Rob, let's take your comment before I go running off here.
Black women don't really deal with a black man from a black man's perspective. They kind of expect for us to be like white men.
Yeah.
So how would you word that, Rob, for us?
They sort of, I can't break it down really more.
Can I break it down for
Break
him?
it down.
I'll break it down. It's like, okay, I think a lot of black women put unrealistic expectations on black men.
Yeah.
And that white man, usually his wife, she may be a housewife, or she may even have a good job. So why is the burden always put on me? You know, if I was white, my wife may be making $50,000. We can live in Dearborn Park or whatever. But it's like the sisters watch these soap operas, and they expect a black man who has a menial job, who has faced discrimination and bad jobs, they expect him to do the same thing that white executive can do. They feel that they should have a big house.
And does it make a man angry to be saddled with these unrealistic expectations by his woman?
Right.
And then criticized for failing to live up to those expectations?
Right. You know what kind of money I make. Now, how can I get a big house in Barrington? You know, and that's just unrealistic.
Right.
But they put that kind of pressure on.
It's almost like, but it's almost like, I ain't talking about it, it's almost like they missed the boat. I mean, the big picture, because it's almost as if they don't understand what, I mean, that the black man is the most, seem like, held down man in the world. You know, nobody else is focused on like we are.
Again, a lack of sensitivity.
It's like
Not appreciated. Not appreciated.
Lack of sensitivity.
It's like we trying to walk, but it's like people's, laying down in front of us trying to trip us at the same time. And it's just like the black women don't understand that. And it's,
Okay.
along
So
with
it's
the rest
a lack
of the world
of,
puts us down, she puts
It's like
us
a
down
lack
too.
of sensitivity and an understanding understanding of the black male experience.
It's like they'll say it ain't no racism.
They think it's no racism.
Yeah. Racism is over.
But these are the men now. It's their perception. It's their perception.
But how come we say there's no racism when we deal with racism too?
That's your sister keyboard moment.
You know, I understand what the brother's talking about because I've heard women say these things and a lot of us put the brothers down. But I think it's important for us not to be saddled with that and allow our brothers to wallow in the fact that he's the lowest thing on the totem pole. We have to be the one to make him realize that he can advance beyond mediocrity.
But how can she do that if she's feeling worthless herself? If she don't have any self-respect, how will she be of any kind of anecdotal benefit to this man? Only a woman with self-respect can do that, right? We're going to come back to these dynamics now.
I'm not particularly saying a woman that has no self-respect.
Right.
I'm just adding to that.
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
All right, so you stepped into the social. You're just a little bit ahead of us. I want to explore these attitudes that men have that when they perceive women behaving in violations or, in a threatening way, it triggers their anger. Yes,
I love this. A lot of women now, and I know, let me ask them, they use their sexuality as a method for control.
Oh yeah.
All right. So to be sexually punished?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sexual punishment.
As though they mean everything.
But it works, though. It does, of course. So you don't like the ideal of women using sex to... We're trying to see, because it's real. Folks are really saying it's really because if you're going to enter into a relationship with a member of the opposite sex here, you're going to have to learn how to deal with this. I've already established the fact that the highest possible quality of happiness available to you is going to be in your relationship to this other gendered human being. Now, if you don't want to settle for anything less than that, if you don't want to live a life that is a form of masturbation in the widest sense of the word, then you got to get this skill. You got to get this skill. Because this is where it's at. This is where it's at. All other forms of happiness are approximations of this. This is top shelf. This experience that a man can have with a woman and a woman can have with a man is divine. Yes. Yes, that's right. You enjoying this workshop today? You enjoying this today?
When women excel on a letter of promotion in their job, they use their position to punish males.
All right, so how would you call that? Economic revenge?
Economic revenge. They forget where they come from and they don't understand. It's just like we made it, I made it, so therefore you should have made my position, so since you didn't.
So they humiliate you.
Yeah.
Rob?
Well, I think that
Look like the men got more issues than the women here, huh?
80%. We got 80% of the country. We got 80% here.
Yes.
I think we done played so far off into this European magic that, especially the women, because they so caught up on beauty and how they look and what they can get. And the man is so mixed up in other ways that we have forgot the whole point, which is the marriage. You know what I'm saying? We all focus in on ourselves, the man and the woman. It's like we ain't making no sacrifice toward the real thing, which is the marriage. We thinking about our individual self, what he's not doing for me and what she's not doing for him.
All right, let's go into this a little deeper now. We want to.
Can we
Today,
put
what
one
we're doing,
more up
we're
here?
stirring up the bottle.
Can we put one more?
Sure. We want to start it up here.
Again, women don't value a man's opinion of aestheticism. If we tell them that they're beautiful because they wear their hair a certain way, they'll go back and change it or turn it blonde or whatever. They don't value our viewpoints in terms of seeing them as...
So they feel that we have no aesthetic ability.
No aesthetic ability. They change it around. Although we said, well, you don't need... Well, you look good in the morning naturally. They'll go paint their face up.
Yeah.
What can I say? I don't mean...
You have to allow her some individual.
Female comment over here.
Female comment over here.
Okay. The thing that bothers me most about men is that they don't realize that women at times emotionally need to be heard. Men never want to communicate
I mean,
their
they'll start
feelings.
talking after.
They never want
Yeah.
to communicate their feelings, and that breaks down a relationship in a way that, I mean, that's why we have so many breakdown in marriages, so many divorces. Men don't want to communicate their feelings. Why do we see today they're about half men, half women? But so often it's the women who take on the onus of improving themselves spiritually. It's the men don't want to go to church. They don't want to pursue any type of spirituality. They don't want to improve themselves. It's always a woman that takes on that onus to become a better person. And then when that woman becomes a better person, he wants to argue with her all the time.
No.
Why you want to go there? Why you want to improve yourself? He's starting to feel insecure.
No, I don't
It's
think
a-
the
You
man-
gotta say something.
Yeah, I got
Do it real quiet. He gotta speak
This,
for
no, to me, it's the competition that I'm always faced with, and I don't really deal with a lot of women, but there's a few on my job, and my job is a manual type job where physical, and if I don't even approach him, well I do, but I'm very careful and say a hand. It's easy to go to a brother or somebody say you want a hand to a woman because it's the competition. In other words, I'm always faced with competing with me. It's supposed to be a unity thing, and I'm always facing competition.
Well, you got these people we've seen a lot of stuff, issues, attitudes that we already have that we bring into these relationships. Because all the things you've been listing here, these have a historical foundation. I mean, these are not new attitudes, right?
And they don't want to take leadership responsibility either. Anytime in which that we give them the lead,
Leadership is never given.
they just sit back and they don't want the leadership. But as soon as you take over, they have comments and rebuttals.
Is that the competition type thing too?
Yeah, that's added on to that.
Go ahead, Rob.
Now, with what you just said, why would you think a man wouldn't want you to progress and better yourself? I mean, why do you feel
Because it is a fact, oftentimes because
I
of
don't
the power.
feel like
Okay,
that.
well maybe not you personally, but many
I
men
don't think a
because
lot
of
of
the
men
power
feel like that.
position that they carry
And
in a
you know
relationship,
what?
they feel fearful.
Now-
That the woman is gonna get one upmanship or something, and she's gonna start knowing more.
Okay,
She'll
that's not
take
wrong with
heed
that.
to
It's
number
nothing
5
wrong with
up
it. Why do
there.
men feel it's a problem then? Men feel it's a problem oftentimes.
Wait, the fact is
They want to
this.
keep a woman dumb.
Okay, look, now see, that's not true.
Okay.
Look,
All right.
a man doesn't mind a woman telling him his bad points, but it's the way you do it. I mean, if you love someone, you don't manipulate that person with your anger or your emotions. If you're supposed to love that person, see, that's the problem that a lot of women have when they talk to women. They belittle when they talk to them like a kid.
Well, the
And
problem is a
that's
lot
not
of
what
men
you-
don't even want to talk.
But see,
They won't even say
of
what's
course
on
you
their
don't want to
mind.
talk because the mouth. See, I mean, when you start talking,
What you say, Rob? The mouth?
start getting disrespectful. When you start getting
That's number 1, right? Number 1 and number 8 go
when you
together.
start getting disrespectful, you bring out a certain type of award type thing in men, and and then if a man
become
continue that
combative,
kind of action, then you find yourself doing this. So of course he don't want to talk, and he either stop talking or he walk away or leave.
All right. Now, because actually we're getting a whole bunch of this stuff coming up here. Let's start processing some of this here so that we don't turn into a Oprah Winfrey. All right? Because we want to leave out of here with knowledge and insight. And we have a bottom line as our goal here, And our bottom line is to be able to contribute to the increase of the happiness in our relationships. That's what it's all about. Now, the very first thing that you begin to see here with these lists of your attitudes and your beliefs and your values, they form for you a rule. They become a form of expectation, what we call a should. Women should do the following, and men should do the following. Okay? These become your rules. And life does not obey your rules at all. Hence the first basis of conflict. Let us look and see, how do we normally manage our anger in these personal relationships? How do you go about handling your anger in your personal relationship? Because remember, if you don't know how to manage your anger, and I've said the conflict is inevitable. Now we looked at some serious things here. Facts. Women have been made to feel and to function in an inferior capacity in both Western and Eastern cultures for millennia. Fact. That's just a natural fact. They have some real issues. Natural fact. You know. Now the question becomes, and yes, Lieutenant, you can ask the question, but I want us to not move onto the entertainment circumference of the issue. We're talking about real stuff here, all right? We want to know how we're going to deal with managing this anger in the context of these realities that we just discussed. Now, how many in here are in relationships? You know, all right. How many are planning on getting a relationship? All right, most of us. Because if you don't, where are you going to get what you want in life from? It's going to come from the other. Bound to get into a relationship. You cannot relate in life. Existence will take you out of here. You quickly, your comment before we start moving into this.
I was going to say, you think they put the 80% on the male because by nature and just in terms of biology, the male is the stronger of the two sexes?
Well, I don't know necessarily if biologically the male is in fact.
I mean, we go out and work, like when we was in the agricultural society, we could go out and do all the physical labors that women couldn't do. You think it stems from that?
Well, I think it stems from, there was a time when in spiritual training that the masters did not require the male disciples to make the greatest effort in this direction. There was a time when that was not necessary. There was a time when women was not denigrated, disrespected, reduced to chattel, possession, etc. And in those times, that wasn't a necessary part of the sodomy. But of course, as we move closer to modern times now, and with the rise and advent of this kind of male madness that is going on, then it becomes more necessary to emphasize that. The second reason, Lieutenant, is that we have all of this advantage, believe it or not, in spite of racism and in spite of all these other things. Just by virtue of being male, we have certain advantages.
Right, because you look even in
That's
war,
right.
military, I think it's only like 1 or 2 societies where women even participate in war. It's usually the men that go out and protect the tribe or whatever.
A division of function. Division of function. And that's always
Because
been the case.
it's more physically demanding in
Well,
warfare.
Well, it has a lot to do when you understand the yin and yang. You have to understand the movement of energy. Fundamentally, we could talk about the yin yang. We could talk about the Shu and Tefnut. You know, all these polarities, the Prakriti and the Purusha. You know, what we're really talking about is female and male. Female and male are energy forms. More particularly, it is the movement of energy. The female energy is receptive. Understand? It is receptive, it receives. The male energy is aggressive. It's a different motion. So the woman is, that female thing received. I think maybe you guys, I probably should introduce the concept of your inner female to you. Because I want to distort this illusion that you're just male and not female. We are both. You have to understand that. But the point I'm trying to make is that you have to look at how these two energies, male and female, function. One receives, the other one proceeds for the union. Psychologically, I told you, it's trust, right? This need in man, right? You need to, that need to be trusted is a sense of him needing to be received by you. embrace life. For him to be trusted is a feeling that you are somehow embracing. You're receiving. And for a man to move toward a woman, you know, in such a way that she's having the experience of security, it's like he's filling her. He's fulfilling her. You understand? It is a kind of spiritual sex that is going on here that is not unlike the physical act of sex. You have to understand, even this physical act of intercourse is a reflection of what the two energies are doing at much higher levels, the male-female energies. You see, it is a couple. You see. And this has a kind of psychological reflection as well. The point is, Lieutenant, that man has to make the most movement. Man is that energy that moves. Female is that energy that receives and embraces that movement. So anything that needs to be done that involves movement needs to be done by us. We're already designed to move. Anything that needs to be received and nurtured and embraced, the woman is already there. She's more immobile, more fixed, more what they call rooted. You hear the old saying, women are more rooted to the earth, they're more rooted. I mean, it really means they're stable, they're not in motion. So before we can appreciate the metaphysics of all of this, you see, we have to understand these little bitty tiny concepts. And we're going to get into the metaphysical part of it a little later. I'm trying as best I can to move you into reflecting on the things that you bring to a relationship that is bound to escalate the conflict. What are the attitudes, Sadra, that we as men bring to the relationship that is bound to escalate the conflict? Yes.
I think oftentimes we tend to be wishy-washy.
Like me?
We don't like to make commitments.
Don't like to make commitments, right? And when we have this kind of attitude and this kind of condition, it is bound to have a negative impact, a counterproductive impact on the development of an authentic relationship with a woman. Is that correct?
Right. It makes her feel insecure, like
makes her feel insecure.
Can't be trusted.
Exactly, right? Because we know that if her need is security, right? And let's say the man needs trust, now we got a frame of reference now. You can begin to see how that behavior impacts on their needs, though. So our inability to make a commitment will definitely shut down her experience of security. How can she feel any sense of security when you won't make a commitment? Is that possible? Therefore, that relationship cannot, by definition, be emotionally fulfilling and satisfying. It can't. And that's why the master said that the first thing a man must do in a relationship, he must make a commitment. Do or die. This is not no experiment. Marriage is not an experiment. It is not a trial. We're going to try this for 6 months, and if it doesn't work, we each get our money back. It's not like that. I used to always say that that is the most important thing that a man has to bring into that relationship. The commitment must be clear to this woman. It must be unequivocal, indubious, solid. Must be there. That's the foundation. Whether you make a lot of money or not, that's another issue. That commitment must be loud, clear, and indubitable. It's very important. Very important. Because without this commitment, she cannot have the experience of trust, of security. And notice, the reverse is true. It's interesting. You thought just men need to have the ability to make a commitment? Of course not. A woman has to also be able to make a commitment to this man that is equally clear. Otherwise, he won't have the experience that he's being trusted. So when you have a relationship where the man is not feeling trusted and the woman is not feeling secure, know that nobody's made a commitment in the relationship. Not yet. Not a clue. So that's a very, very profound insight that you share with us, you see, and it's probably one of the most important components. So if you're going into a relationship and you can't make a commitment, best not to go into the relationship, because you will not contribute to that person's happiness, nor will that person contribute anything towards your happiness. The commitment must be there. What are some of the other attitudes, beliefs, values, functions, etc., that we bring into a relationship? Because remember, I asked the question whenever we used to do a lot of counseling, marriage counseling, I always ask the question, what are you bringing to the relationship that is causing the relationship to be dysfunctional? There are dysfunctional marriages, aren't there? There is such a thing as a dysfunctional relationship, right? What are some of the other things that we bring? Need to control, power, need to control, right? When you need to control. So when a man brings this need to control and to dominate a woman, I said from the top of the discussion that anyone who's having the experience of being dominated and controlled by definition will not be happy. In fact, what would it produce? It will produce anger. And it will produce anger that has the intensity of hate. You will hate that person who dominated and controlled you. Why? Because they deprive you of a fundamental need, which is the psychological need to experience freedom. The experience of freedom is essential, psychologically. And when we come in and we're dominating and we're controlling, it shuts down the other person's experience of freedom, and that person now will hate you. So sometimes we bring in this thing into our relationships, right? What are some of the other things that we bring into these relationships? And remember, we bringing them into the relationships. We're not focusing on the other so much now. Let's focus on us.
High expectations.
Unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
See the things showing back up, you see the truth and the accuracy of you all analysis, because we're seeing all these things crop back up, right? These expectations. Let me explain something very interesting to you about this phenomenon, because this is a big one. It is a tremendous source of conflict. You remember at one time we talked about birth order, your position in the family system, right? Well, I want to focus a bit on really some of the things that you were getting in that system, particularly as it relates to your mother and your father. Okay? Now let's say, for instance, if you are male, you came out of a family system, right, where your mother supplied the following. Cooked your meals whenever you asked for them, right? Picked up all your clothes behind you, right? What I'm saying is that your mother formed a particular parent relationship, complex, with you. You expect that. You tend to project that expectation onto your wife. Is your wife your mama? Your wife is not your mama. But we have projected our expectations onto her. Subtly, unconsciously. This is not a conscious thing. All of the needs that were being fulfilled for you by your mother in the context of your family system, you usually unconsciously bring those back into the personal relationship and project them and transfer them onto your wife, who is not your mom. And the result is that she has no option but to fail to live up to your expectations. Now, whenever somebody fails to live up to your expectations, you put them in a state of contempt. Now you develop contempt for that person because you are no use to me. You ain't doing nothing for me. The feeling is that this woman is useless to me. Well, she is. If you're trying to use her like you use your mother, you're right. But you have to drop that expectation. You see, you have to form a whole different relationship. Or it could be the woman who, again, these cross relationships. The father in there protected you, always bail you out, fix your flat tire, and all this male. You come to associate certain needs as being best fulfilled through a male, based upon your experience with the males in your family system. You have no other basis for reaching your conclusions, folks. You have not interacted with every other man on this planet. This is not a large experiment you conducted. Your whole set of expectations that you have projected on the men arose entirely out of the context of your family system. Reached all them conclusions when you're 4 or 5 years old and have now brought them with you into this most difficult task of life called personal relationships. And if these have been the set of expectations you've had, you see, to always be rescued by the male on the white shining horse, well, you are not your husband, little girl. You're his wife. You can't expect that from him. But you bring those expectations. Daddy never whooped you. Daddy never scolded you. You was daddy's little girl. You was his little princess. Well, you're not your husband, little princess. He's going to scold you if you're wrong, disagree with you, going to argue back at you. And you didn't expect that. And it becomes difficult.
What about if the father's not in the home? What kind of expectations would that girl have?
Oh, that's even more complicated. That's even more complicated. Because now she's thrown back on her imagination. Let me say a little bit about animus and animus. We have to say a little bit about that, because as we go on in this conversation, you're going to need to know these things. And again, this is not an academic discussion in this alone. We're really talking about the fact that most of us are in these relationships with another human being. I'm talking about these close and personal relationships with your husband, with your wife, with your lover, with your spouse, with your children. That's the stuff that human happiness is made of. We got to get this stuff right. You got to get this right. You can't go nowhere else in life if you don't get this right. You go out and make all the money you want, and if you don't have this right, you don't have nothing. You have nothing coming. You got to get this thing right in order to have any experience of success and the benefit of succeeding. Okay, how much money you make, how many PhDs you got. This is the stage through which this has to be experienced. Now, let me back up just for a moment here, because you asked the right question. What happens where there's not a father in the house? And the child now has not had any exposure, you see? Well, it's still going to come to some conclusion. It'll come to a conclusion about that. Don't expect nothing from a man. Right? Same thing. Now, you can't expect nothing from a man. Men are not dependable. And now, how you going to go into a relationship? First of all, you're not even going to go into a relationship. You're going to always be on the periphery. Just on the edge. But you're never going to get really into the relationship. And the man will feel that. You're not really in this relationship. It's like we dating. I don't want no date. I want a wife. You see? That's why I got married. If I wanted to date, I would have continued to date it. But the person can't get into that because there's no model. You see? Or there's a wrong model. Or there's been a mistaken conclusion. So that's one of the dynamics, sister, that very often happen. But what happens that is even more difficult to notice is this thing that Jung used these words, the anima and the animus. And it doesn't make any difference. All I want you to understand is that we each have each female has a male image of herself. Now this is deep. And each male, this is the female, and each male has a female image of himself. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Interesting. Now, very often this image that we have of the opposite gender that is buried within our own psyches constitute the ground from where our expectations emerge. You understand? Because what we are in search of in the outward woman is the qualities of our inner woman. Because we seek to be whole. Because we're split. We're schizophrenic. You can't feel the feminine in you. Because it's been socialized out of you. Or you can't experience the masculine in you. Right? And so you are in search of that which is in yourself. My own teacher used the example of a musk deer. And you know, in the navel of a deer, there's the scent of musk. And the deer, strangely enough, is attracted to the scent of musk. But he roams through the forest, head up high, sniffing, running around in circles, looking for the source of the musk that fills the air, not knowing that it's coming from his own wing. We're like that. You are in a relationship seeking that in a woman which is really in you. It completes you. It drives you. Now, let's say if the image, the internalized image that you have of the male in you is unrealistic. You're looking for a man who will be just the kind of man you would be if you were. You are looking for a woman that will be the kind of woman you would be if you was. That's what you look at, and you look for. At a very unconscious level. Think. You have to think about it. And the problem is that when you add in an element of perfection to this image, now you wind up looking for a perfect woman. No such thing exists. You're looking for a perfect man. No such thing exists. We got plenty of imperfect men, and we have plenty of imperfect women, enough to go around. One for everybody. Some can have two. All right? But I must warn you, they will be imperfect. They will have faults. They will have shortcomings. That's okay. Because they're still worthwhile. And this magic thing that happened between men and women can still happen. But if you're looking for a perfect mate, you're in trouble. And even if you found the perfect mate, what makes you think they will want you? Really? Why would someone perfect want you? You're not perfect. Why would they want you? So we got to begin to look at all of these things. Right? We have to begin to look at all these things. But I want you to get comfortable with this thing. I want you to get comfortable with this thing. Because as Pam shared with us at the top of this discussion, very often what you're reacting to is your own projections. Not only with casual strangers, but people that you're in close personal relationship. And it's causing a lot of unnecessary grief. So I think we'll end on that because I gotta let that sink in. What I would like for you to do as a homework in your own behalf, I want you to list out the characteristics that you're looking for in a man. But strangely enough, match them with, are those the characters that you would display if you were? I want women to look at their inner man, and I want the men to look at their inner woman, and then compare that to what you're looking for in a woman. I think you will be shocked. Because in it, you even got the way they should look. You should have a beard. If I was a man, I'd have a beard. And hence, you will find yourself attracted to men with beards. If I was a woman, I would wear spike heels. That's exactly how I would dress and look. And hence, you attract, and you don't know why you attract the women with spike heels. Because if you were a woman, that's how you would dress. We have extents. But they are extents. And when you tell that woman, well, you look good like that, well, you are projecting onto her how your inner woman should look. This woman ain't even interested in wearing that stuff you're talking about. You know what I mean? At all. But you're trying to make her in your image. We're trying to make woman in our image, and we're trying to make men in our image. Let me tell you the secret, folks. We are made in the image. More about that next time. Enough for today. This is great. You enjoyed today.